This is how many people want to become a UX designer today. This is how many people actually have the job. This is the ones making over 100K USD a year. And this is the designers making over 300K USD a year. Designers get very different pay even in the same office. And I spent years in big tech trying to understand what do I need to learn to get myself into that top earning group of designers. Turns out the skill set that sets these designers apart from the rest of us is not in Figma. It sounds way too simple to matter, and that is why I ignored it for years. To understand what it is, why it matters, we first need to understand what defines the ceiling of a design career. Take a guess. What is it? It is whether you have a seat at the table during the early product discovery meeting. If you don't have a seat in this meeting room, your ceiling is low. But if you do, your growth potential is much higher. Here is why. When you learn UX design in school, you are taught to go through this full discovery phase. You do UX research, emphasize with users, synthesize findings to get to a well-defined problem. That is the theory. In reality, when I enter the real world, I realize most people don't understand what UX design is. They treat designers as visualizers. People come up with the solution directly and then ask me to design the high-fidelity screens right away. If you're in this position, your design is capped by how well these stakeholders think about the product. And they are not trained designers, so the average quality is pretty low. Even if your design turns out great, the people who made those early decisions in those discovery meetings, strategy meetings, they are the ones who get the credit. They get promoted, not you. And I had to work my way into these meeting rooms. First, I changed my title from UI UX designer to product designer because I want to signal that I'm here to help shape the product, not just here to decorate screens. Second, together with my manager and the design team, we had to pitch over and over again on why design should be involved in those early discovery meetings when important product decisions are made. So in one word, the skill is communication. That's definitely not a major my parents would want me to take back in college, but the skill that gets you your first client project, gets you past a job interview, gets you a seat at the table, gets your ideas implemented, and finally gets you a higher paycheck, all comes down to communication. You get what you pitch for and you are always pitching. It's not something that you can learn in a technical way, but here's what I can do. In every part of the design process, there's an opportunity to communicate better. I will break this process down so you will leave this video with a set of tangible things to do. You will also learn one tool that can help you along the way, and that is Granola. On the surface, it looks like an AI note-taking tool, but it's so much more than that. It can seriously improve your communication. And that is why most of my friends working in AI and tech use it on an hourly basis. The link to Granola is in the description if you want to try it for free. More on that later. First, top designers don't skip the problem space and jump right into the solution. They've been through this cycle enough times to know that if the foundation is wrong, it will cost much more time later. Even if the leadership asks you to design something in a day, if you start designing right away, that one-day project will for sure turn into a one-quarter project. I've been in this situation so many times, not fun. Nothing is more urgent than figuring out the right problem. So instead of jumping straight into design, set up meetings to understand at least these three things. First, what is the goal of the project? Second, what is the business strategy behind it? And third, who are the key stakeholders and what do they care about? At the end of the day, we're working inside an organization, and if we understand what each stakeholder cares about, that becomes our biggest negotiation leverage later on when we need them to buy into our plan. Now, this part is not easy. It takes courage to speak up and initiate these conversations. I have never met a designer who enjoys meetings, but one good meeting early can save you from 20 messy meetings later. If you don't know how to get started, today you can use AI to help, and I will use Granola as an example. When I need to draft a pitch, I go to Granola. On the left sidebar, I click Chat, and I will just ask it to help me write a message. Here I will say, help me write a message to my PM Elizabeth to set up a quick meeting for this new project. I want to clarify goals and align direction. Elizabeth is really busy and she often rejects meetings, so make sure to persuade her to join by clarifying why it benefits her. I'll click Send, and in a few seconds, I get a message I can use right away. What makes Granola different from other AI tools is that it has all my past meeting transcript with Elizabeth. Every time I join a meeting, I use Granola to take notes, so it has the context on who Elizabeth is, her communication style, and what does she cares about. So when it writes something, it's very targeted and never generic. I like to use AI as a starting point. I think AI can be a great assistant, but I never treat AI as my boss. I always review the message, adjust the tone, and only send it if I truly believe it's strong, not when AI thinks it's strong. If you haven't leveraged AI in this way yet, don't worry, you are not behind. I will show you more about it in later chapters, so stick around. Once you understand the problem, the next step is actually getting the chance to talk to users. And this is where a lot of designers get stuck, because this is not just a design task, it's a communication task. You need to convince your product manager and your UX researcher it's worth doing research early. And you can use the trick I shared from the last chapter. And once you've convinced the team to move forward, the focus is not writing a perfect research plan. It's getting the meetings with your users on that calendar. If you wait until everything is perfectly prepared, that user interview will never happen. And honestly, in early user interviews, you don't need a perfect script. It is much more important to be a good listener. Let users talk about their situation. And when you talk to users, ideally you want another person to take notes for you. That way you can focus fully on the conversation instead of typing and listening at the same time, which I used to do pretty often. And one important detail is how notes are taken. The best notes are not rewritten summaries. They should stay as close as possible to what the users actually said. A lot of people don't know this and they try to rephrase what the user said, but in reality, you are changing the tone anytime you are rephrasing something. So don't do that. And if you don't have another person to take notes for you, you can record the meeting, look at it later, and then take notes by yourself. But I just happen to be a person that hates looking at my own meeting, so I use this other trick, and let me show you how to use Granola for note-taking. Once you sign up to Granola with your work email, every time you join a meeting, you'll see this notification popping up. Just click Take Notes. And then Granola will start transcribing the entire conversation. You can pause or stop it anytime using the square button, right here. After the meeting, you can click Generate Notes, and Granola will turn the conversation into structured notes for you. This is so much better than trying to type everything yourself. You stay present in the conversation and you still get accurate notes afterward. If you want to learn more about any specific line in the note, just click the search icon on the right. Then you will see a transcript summary with direct quotes. If you click the quote, it will take you to the exact part of the original transcript, so you can see what the user actually said before any rephrasing or summary. One important thing, AI is not magic. It doesn't read your mind. So if you had an idea during or after the user interview, but you didn't write it down, then it won't magically appear in the notes. So please still make sure you capture your own thoughts. And if you want to restructure your notes, you can do it yourself or you can use a Granola template. Go to the top and select Enhanced. Then you can choose from any pre-built template. I like to use the Customer Discovery template, which works amazingly well for user interviews. There's also another template literally called User Interview. Feel free to try that one too. There's another really important meeting a top-tier designer loves to set up during the early stage of a project, and that is running an effective kickoff meeting that brings all relevant stakeholders together. That includes engineers, content designers, legal UX researchers, marketers, PMs, and sometimes leadership. The goal of this meeting is to get everyone in the same room early, let people share ideas and constraints early on. You will be surprised on how many constraints exist. Engineers will tell you what's technically impossible to do, and legal will tell you what is not allowed. And if you don't hear these early, you'll probably go through an experience like this. You spend months designing a project, trying to align everyone through separate meetings, and then finally you get to talk to the legal person. And then he tells you that this entire design pattern not allowed in Europe. That is why it is so important to have these kickoff meetings. You get all the concerns out early, align everyone early, and avoid having to run 20 separate meetings later just to fix things. And here's a quick tip for these kickoff meetings. Sometimes you'll be in a room where people are speaking the same language, but you still don't understand anything. Business terms, engineering terms, it happens all the time. The best thing you can do is just ask the dumb question. You are choosing between being confused for 3 minutes versus being confused for 3 months. The previous choice is better. And if you really don't have the gut, the second best thing you can do is leverage the power of AI to your advantage. For example, if you're using Granola for note-taking, you can click Ask Anything right here at any time, and then use the chat feature to ask questions. I bet the most asked question is, what did I miss? They even made it into a recipe, which is just how you call these little badges that you can click right away to ask things. You can explore more recipes by typing / on your keyboard. Some help you summarize, some suggest questions. There's even a joke one. I tried it, it is not bad. I still think I'm funnier, but Granola definitely knows more fun facts than I do. If you think these AI features bring you joy, use them. If you think they are distracted, your feeling is also valid. The goal is to stay present, understand what's going on, make sure everyone is aligned early, no matter what method or tool you are using. We covered how to start a project strong. Now let's talk about the design part, the solution space. When I started my career, I used to lock myself in a room, design for hours, make everything as perfect as possible, and then finally show it to my boss and my team. And in my head, I imagined everyone will be so impressed and say, "Oh my God, Aliena, this is amazing." That is exactly the opposite workflow you should use if you want a higher paycheck. Great design does not happen in isolation. Great design happens in meetings. When you're bringing a feature to life, you're not doing it alone. I work super close with a product manager and a content designer. The product manager understands the business side, talks to everyone, aligns everything, and has a lot of power. The content designer writes the content, which is the text, and she is just as important, especially to those B2B products where it is really difficult to explain the concepts. So instead of disappearing and designing everything alone, I just like to set up a 1-hour meeting, sometimes 30 minutes, with these two people, and then we would design together in Zoom. And I will open Figma and then I will wireframe different directions on the spot. We will all throw out ideas, react to them immediately, and give feedback right away. And because the ideas were created so fast in a very low fidelity, nobody get emotionally attached, and that made the whole process so much easier. We became much more open to exploring because nothing felt too precious yet. And one very important part of this process is good documentation. You need to capture what directions were explored, what people liked, and what people didn't like. And back then, I typed all of this manually. There was a lot of grammar mistake, but it still worked. Now I will leverage Granola AI. Just use the Ask Anything feature again, which is the big text box here. Then I would ask something like, summarize what we liked and didn't like about this direction. I like this result, so I will copy it also to Figma. This matters because later, when you present to a bigger team or to the leadership, and then when people ask you, did you choose that direction? Instead of trying to remember on the spot, you can just show you explore it, you show your annotation, and you can explain based on your note. There's one more technical thing I want you to learn, and that is how to use Granola MCP. Even if you don't use it right away, I want you to at least understand what a MCP is, because this term is going to come up again and again in this AI revolution, like Figma MCP. MCP stands for Model Contact Protocol. And when I first heard it, I thought it sounds too technical, so I walked away. Don't do this, because it is so much simpler than it sounds. MCP just means connecting one AI tool to other tools. So when we say Granola MCP, it just means Granola can connect with other apps like Cloud or ChatGPT. If you have a paid Cloud or ChatGPT account, you can connect Granola to Cloud or ChatGPT. Here's how I connect Granola with ChatGPT. Open ChatGPT and sign in. Then go to Settings. Search for Granola. And connect it. That's it. Once it is connected, you can use Granola inside ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT to reference your meetings. This can help with things like reviewing meeting notes, drafting proposals, and so much more. When you switch from designing alone to designing in meetings, two great things happen. First is that you get more free time. Imagine every Thursday you get a no meeting Thursday where you block the entire day for focus time, but in reality, you're just focusing on walking your dog in the park. Well, definitely don't say I told you to do this. I was just talking about my friend Elizabeth. She does it. You get this free time because the hardest part of design is making those high-level decisions. Like where to place, which section, how does the flow work, where do you put the entry point for this new product? Those decisions are already made when you were working with your PM and the content designer. So now your job is just to take those chosen decisions and polish it from low fidelity to high fidelity using your design system. That part is fast. The second good thing that happens is you get support. Because people in those meetings are already aligned with you. So later, when you present the work to a bigger group, your product manager and content designer are not just watching from the side, they understand the reasoning and they can back you up. It's like you suddenly have this little squad defending the work with you. And that is amazing. So if you're designing in isolation right now, change that. Do whatever you can to move toward designing in meetings. Because top designers do not disappear for 2 weeks and come back with perfect screens. They think with people, make decisions with people. That is why their work gets supported and gets implemented. Designing with a team is great, but there is a trap. If you only rely on internal feedback, you are still guessing. Most of the time, we are not the user of the product we design. So even if the team feels great about a solution, that does not mean the users will buy it. That is why usability testing matters. Go back to users and show them your solution. You want to see how real people use what you designed. And I know what you're going to say. We don't have time. No project ever has enough time. Usability testing only takes 1 afternoon. It's the same amount of time if you were to drive to a shopping mall, buy a dress, and then come back. Probably less than that, okay? The easiest way for usability testing is just share your Figma prototype on a call. And I like to begin by setting expectations. I tell the user this might or might not solve their problem. And if anything feels confusing, it is not their fault, it is our fault. And please tell us. Then I ask them to walk me through what they are seeing and then what they want to do next. But here's the key. Before they click on anything, I always ask, what do you expect to see when you click this? This is where the real insight comes from. You're comparing their expectation with your design. And your goal is to make those two match as closely as possible. Good design is not about surprising users. It's about making things feel so clear and so natural that they move through the product without friction. And for note-taking, you can use Granola if you don't have anyone to help you. I also recommend taking some screenshots so you can later annotate what exactly needs to be changed. And after the meeting, you can use something like the user interview template to organize your note. But even if you took really clear note, I will still suggest you to screen record the entire meeting because there's a trick you can use and I'll tell you later. And that brings me to the next topic, which is how to design presentation in a larger audience. In a small team, things are easy. People jump in all the time, ask questions, and it feels more like collaboration than a formal presentation. But when it comes to those kind of meetings with 30 people in the room, some from leadership, some from the partner team, and you are the one presenting the project, pitching the idea, or just giving a progress update with a slideshow. Oh my God, that is a very different game. And it feels stressful and formal. I haven't done one of those presentations for a while, so if you have some tricks, share it in the comment, and here is mine. First, do not try to sound smart. Try to be clear. I get so frustrated when people do this. Imagine this one dude talks for 30 minutes nonstop, only with jargon from their own field and in full monotone with zero interaction. Oh my God, what a torture. Even if he has a brilliant idea, who do you think will have the patience to keep up with that? So I like to use simple words and I don't talk UX. I talk either like a normal human being or I talk business. If something can be explained in 2 sentences, I don't use 10. And here's how a presentation usually goes for me. As a reminder, this is the problem we're solving. Right now, the user is frustrated because look at this workflow. Our users are saying things like ABC. And from a business standpoint, we're missing on this opportunity of how many $1 million per year. Then I pause and ask, any quick question before I move on? If you are on Zoom, you can even just say, if this makes sense, feel free to react with an emoji. This is intentional interaction design to keep people on the same page and pay attention. And if someone asks a question, don't panic. Let them ask. You'll know this project better than anyone else in the room, so 99% of the time, you can answer it. But if you need a few extra seconds to think, here are tricks. You can say, thank you so much for asking. Could you please rephrase your question for me again? Or even, I'm curious about what made you ask the question. And also helps you to understand their question a bit better. And if you really don't have an answer to your question, you can also say, that is a great question. Actually, Ben and I worked on this project together, and I think Ben must have something great to say here. Hey, Ben, are you here? Elizabeth was just asking about blah, blah, blah. What do you think, Ben? Then the poor Ben jumps in and then saves you. Then when I get to the solution, I like to say, the good news is, after 2 months of work and thanks to Ben, Elizabeth, Peter, ABCDE, we landed on a solution that works really well. I mentioned these people by name, so now they are alert and ready to defend for me. Then I show the solution clearly. Sometimes I click through the prototype myself. Other times I will say, Peter, imagine you are the user here. What would you do first? Then Peter says what he wants to do, and then I click through it live. Now people are not just watching, they're also thinking with you. And then this next trick connects back to the last chapter. After you show the solution, show a 1-minute video of real users reacting to the prototype positively. And of course, don't fake it. When people hear actual users saying, I love it, or this is so much easier, it hits differently emotionally. I did that with a few of my projects back when I was working for eBay, and I think probably someone else told me this trick, and it worked so well all the time. And then at the end, I close with something like, that is the project update. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you for staying with me. And most of the time, people will react pretty positively. Not because you sounded smart or you used all your jargon, but rather because you made it easy for them to care and understand. Now, hearing these tips and actually practicing them are still 2 completely different things. So this year, make communication one of your top priorities on things to improve on. And how do you improve on communication? The answer is getting feedback. After a presentation or even after a meeting, you can always ask your colleagues, what worked well in my presentation and what do you think I could improve on? That kind of feedback is so valuable because most of us are not really good at judging our own communication. And if asking people directly still feels like too big of a step, then you can take the middle ground, and that is asking AI for feedback. If you're already using Granola for your meetings, it already has your past transcript. So you can go to the sidebar, click chat, and ask questions like, how was my communication overall this week? And what should I improve? Just wait until it gives you the feedback. Granola also has recipes that can give you direct feedback that goes beyond communication, like business feedback or life coach feedback. And there's this recipe called Coach Me Matt. Oh my god. I need to warn you about Matt. I don't like Matt. Matt was so strict to me. He went straight into what I was doing wrong, and I'm too weak for that. I prefer the sandwich method where you compliment first and then you tell me what to do better and then you compliment again. But don't worry, not all recipes are like Matt. Granola in general has a really friendly tone. And if you're interested, try out, link in the description. Maybe you can handle Matt. I used to treat meetings as something to get through so I can go back to the real work on the canvas. If there's one idea I want you to leave this video with, it is this one. Meetings are not the annoying byproduct of your design job. They are the job. Meetings are where decisions are made, where alignment happens, and where your impact as a designer gets seen. Once you switch this mindset, your career only takes off from here. If you want a dedicated tutorial on how to use Granola, comment Granola. And if you want me to break down how to optimize your communication for job search, comment UX job, and I'll consider making it. I'm Aliena Cai. I talk about design, tech, and business. If you like this video, you will also like this video, so I'll see you there. Subscribe, like, and turn on all notifications. I also run a Figma Trusted Design Bootcamp at Fast Track UX, and if you're someone who seriously wants a better paid design job this year, check out my program. Bye! There's even a joke one. And I have to work my way into this meeting. And I have to work my